Israel is really the sort of front line of Western civilization. Even in the sort of so-called illegal settlements, where people have guns in their hips, you feel safer than you do walking about London. I've seen what you've done for Israel, and I want that from you too. Treating Nick Fuentes as if he's a serious, solemn figure who means everything he says in an absolute literal sense. Like, that's silly. Nick is essentially a Zionist, but for America. We sort of descend into a Northern Irish-style sectarian conflict, and I don't think the government has any grip on it whatsoever. It's just so disgusting. It shows the sort of the self-loathing and the self-harm. Why don't we get that warrior spirit back and take control of our country?
Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon, and returning to the show today is our old friend Leo Kearse. How you doing, Leo?
Yeah, not bad. I'm not that old. I'm only 49.
Great point.
Got my hair done.
My birthday's on Saturday. Yeah, your hair's looking good. I'm thinking, do I need it? I don't know what to do. It's horrible, this hair conundrum, isn't it, when you hit a certain age?
Yeah, and also, because the thing is, some people look good when they shave their heads. Like Jason Statham doesn't need to go to Turkey. He'd probably look worse if he had a full head of hair. But for me, I've got like a sort of pointy head.
Right. Yeah, and if he did go to Turkey, he'd probably end up falling out with the hair guy, end up beating up everyone in the hair transplant place, ends up killing 20 people, then just running around Turkey.
Yeah, he'd be injected with some sort of drug that he had to punch somebody in the face every 5 seconds or his heart bursts.
Yeah. His hair, he grows too much hair unless he kills someone every 16 seconds. Yeah. The one advantage for you, though, is no one's ever seen the top of your head because you're 7'2". So it's never been.
I just need a ring. I just need a ring around the side.
Certain builders on ladders have gone, oh, your head's a bit pointy. Many people. All right, so much to discuss, Leo. But I wanted to get you on because you've just been to Israel, and you know what is perfect about this? I've just had Dr. Nima Parvini, aka Academic Agent, and he's, let's say, a fairly robust critic of Israel. And I thought, what would be so fair is to get the most Zionist person I can think of on the week after. Just show them straight down the middle. I'm like the BBC. I'll have annoying comments all over the place, but I'm like, sorry, what the BBC should be. I'm actually neutral. I'm actually objective.
But Josh Howie wasn't available, so you got me.
Yeah. I did try to get in touch with him. It's quite hard though because I had to unblock him on everything. So I thought we'd talk about Israel first. Israel first, actually, something we'll discuss later. Like, are people in America putting Israel first? But you went out there on this trip.
Yeah.
Now, this trip I know has been offered to several people I know, and they've actually turned it down. Some of them took it, like Connor Tomlinson. But why did you decide to go?
I wanted to go basically because I wanted to be able to tell people when I was arguing with them, no, you haven't been? I just wanted to say that. No, I mean, I'm really sort of interested in Israel. I wanted to see it for myself. I've always kind of wanted to go there, even back in my sort of early 20s when I was a massive advocate for the Palestinian cause, and I think Israel is really the sort of front line of Western civilization, and all the things that Israel's criticized for are just things that we're gonna have to do in the West in a decade or two, the way things are going. So I wanted to see for myself see where things are on the ground, because there were a lot of things that kind of surprised me. We're told it's an apartheid state. It's actually very multiracial and very, the Israeli Arabs and Muslims are all mixed in. The Arabs are a pretty sizable chunk of Israel's population, and they cohabit. They live together. They're citizens, and that works. I mean, some would say more successfully than it does in Birmingham. And also going to see the settlements in the West Bank, or they call it Judea and Samira or something. But we all know it as the West Bank, and seeing that it's not this. They're not there sort of stealing land and bashing people over the head. Like the settlements I went to, they were on unoccupied land, and it's also land that they've won several times over in various wars. So even though technically they're illegal or it's disputed territory, I thought that was interesting to see, and it had a real Wild West feel. Everybody's got a gun on their hip, and the weird thing was in Israel, even in the sort of so-called illegal settlements, where people have guns in their hips, you feel safer than you do walking about London. You know what I mean? There's no sort of just dodgy, 65 IQ Janjaweed militants walking around in dirty tracksuits, flush with their pockets hanging heavy with all the welfare they've got from your taxes. It's all it feels like a civilization. It feels like a sort of nice orderly country.
All right, very interesting. Yeah, I was in Guatemala and the guards had like massive guns, but I was thinking that's probably to protect me rather than like I'm the one here who's going to be stolen from because no one has any money here. So I'm like, actually, the guns are reassuring, and we're sort of hitting that point now, aren't we, where we need guards on trains and we kind of need that everywhere. So I can understand that point. Do you think though they just showed you the good bit when you say it's this great civilization, everyone's mixed? Did they give you like the Disney tour and there's like a door they didn't open? They're like, shut that, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Like, don't look in there. Do you think they just showed you the highlights because you were on the I don't want to call it the propaganda tour, but
Well, they took us to Kfar Aza, which is the kibbutz that was raided by Hamas, and they took us to the scene of the Nova music massacre, and the people we spoke to. Obviously, they're put across Israel's side of the story. Thing is, I already kind of know a lot of both sides of the story, and I knew a lot of the stuff they were telling us. So for me, it was more interesting to actually just get there and speak to just random people in the street. And speak to Israeli politicians because I think their whole approach to the West has been wrong. The way they sort of advocate for Israel in the West, the old tactics that they used, that they're still using. I mean, you've got people on the right coming out saying Nick Fuentes should be banned and censored, and we've got to fight this evil, and condemning this moral condemnation of Nick Fuentes. So that's not going to defeat him. Like the whole approach to handling that is wrong. And I met with Israeli politicians when I was there, and I said, like, you've got to change the way, you've got to change your approach. There's like even one of the guys I met with, he's explaining the losses in Israel, and he says 1,200 people were killed. That's equivalent to like 44,000 being killed on a terrorist attack in America. And it's like, no, it's not. It's that sounds terrible. I know he's trying to make the point that Israel is such a small country, but to anybody who wants to misinterpret that, that's him saying, oh, Israelis are worth 20 times as much as Americans, which is that's a terrible thing to say that plays right into the hands of anybody who wants to portray that side of Israel. So that sort of approach. The thing that surprised me most was going over there after hearing that Israel just wants Zionism for Israel, and they want open borders, multiculturalism for the West. They want nationalism for Israel, and they want open borders for Britain. Man, everybody I met, everybody I spoke to, people on the left, people on the right, women, men, everybody was like, what on earth is Britain doing? Why are you bringing in all these Muslims? Are you insane? This is going to be really bad for you. And you're not doing anything to like handle Islamism. You're not doing anything to, control it like Gulf countries do. So that was a real eye opener, because the perception, I think, for a lot of people, especially on the right, is that Israel has this sort of dichotomy, this sort of disingenuous two-facedness, where they want Zionism for Israel and the Alex Soros open borders for the West, and that's not the case. Like everyone I spoke to was like, no, of course we want nationalism for the West. Maybe not too much. There have been occasions when nationalism has got a bit out of hand in Europe, but I think we've moved past that point now.
Well, I'd love it if you managed to change Israeli foreign policy from chatting to them. But yeah, that was one critique Connor Thompson had. He went over there and said, well, look, we just want the same that you have. It's that old meme. I want what Jesus, I want what is it? I want what he
for me. Or I've seen what you've done for Israel, and I want that for me too.
Yeah, but you reckon the people on the ground do want that, but the administration doesn't seem to necessarily want that, and also there's this accusation that, well, they'll send over a load of people from Gaza. They'll say, yeah, go to Europe as refugees, and they'll send over more. Is that not the case?
Well, I mean, the flip side to that, I mean, I didn't speak to anybody, too high up, but the flip side to that is like, why are you letting them in? Why is Britain, why is Europe is America being such a bunch of pussies? Like this is what people were saying to me. Why is Britain doing this to itself? And I asked that same question, and it seems that Britain has been taken over by a cabal of leftists, and it's not like people say it's the Jews. The Jews are doing this. It's like, no, there are some obviously viciously left wing Jews who advocate for open borders. I mean, look at Zach Polanski, for example. But there's incredibly based right wing Jews who are the opposite way. Look at Stephen Miller in America. And I think maybe because the left wing Jews are more prominent, or people listen to them more, or they've managed to work their ways into positions of influence and power, people listen to them more. But like British people and like just regular Brits have to be more assertive and stop being a bunch of pussies. This whole message that's pumped out to us, that's like, oh, you've got to be kind and tolerant. Britain's a kind and tolerant place. No, we're not. We took over the whole world. Like a third of the world was under British control. Why don't we get that? Why don't we get that, warrior spirit back and take control of our country and, stop letting it's white leftists who are doing the damage. And I include, the Jewish leftists in that. But for people on the right to say, oh, it's the Jews, man, I'm sorry, it's the Owen Joneses.
And some of it is white liberal women, which we'll have to get onto when we get onto Mamdani, if we do, because they're all voting for him now, which is mental. Yeah, okay, very interesting. I mean, we don't know why our government's doing it either. We talk about this endlessly. It's because this elite is convinced we need this, but that's why Reform are polling at 30%, whatever, and all the other parties are down at 17. It's a complete rejection of that, isn't it? Because it's clearly not working. And this latest train attack is another example. There's another new attack every week to show.
Yesterday there was that car ramming in France. Like a car rammed into a bunch of cyclists and jumped out shouting Allah Akbar, and then set his car on fire, which is clearly the work of white middle-aged gammons.
Yeah, and it's not being considered a terror incident properly. Yeah,
no,
I'm just joking. But it's always like, we're not considering it a terror incident at this time, even though the guy's like had a flag saying terror.
Yeah. He's got a suicide vest, and he's like, I am definitely in ISIS. My name is
you don't know
Mohammed.
Yeah. My name is ISIS Al-Teraman. Yeah, well, we're going to look into it.
Jihad has a number of meanings.
Oh yeah, peaceful struggle. Think talking about that. I wanted to get onto Tommy's terrorism charge actually, but first, you were out there with Tommy Robinson, and now Tommy said he'll do the podcast at some point. I just was too polite to follow up, but if he ever does, I'll ask him this myself. I definitely don't want to speak behind his back, and I certainly don't want to get lamped. But I just want to say, some people thought, well, one, what was your impression of being out there with Tommy? But also, and the point two, some people thought, looking at the videos, he was kind of being mugged off. We know he's a very tough guy. He's not one who's wont to get mugged off. But it looked a bit like some of the representatives were kind of lecturing him on behalf of Israel, and he was representing Britain. And we're like, it's a bit much, mate. A lot of people felt like that. I don't know. What was your thought?
There was one guy. Was it Rabbi Glick? Rabbi Glick, I think it was him. I'm not sure. I might be wrong, but he said something about he's talking about Britain's history with Jews and with Israel, and because we didn't close the concentration camps straight away when they were liberated. They were liberated. I mean, I should imagine people got treated a bit better. But the concentration camps were kept open, and then there was other, bad stuff we did, the partitioning and all the rest of it. Like Jews weren't, Israel should have been, when we did all the slicing up of the countries, we should have been like, yeah, listen, Jews, here you go, here's Israel, like we did with, everywhere else, Pakistan, India, Syria, Lebanon for the Christians, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a good case for us to go back in and take it over again and run it properly, but yeah, so I think he said something like nasty, based on that, he said, Britain should burn forever. But then if you look at the whole context of the conversation,
that one.
Yeah.
And then he did a follow-up where he rephrased, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was maybe naivety on Rabbi, whatever the guy's name was, naivety on his part, that he's saying something as part of a much bigger discussion. And obviously, that's the soundbite that's going to be clipped out, and it looks terrible. And so you got to be careful. You got to be a bit political about it and not give people sound bites. But overall, man, I mean, everything that I saw, I know people were telling me this is going badly for Tommy or whatever. I don't think it is, and I don't think those people see the bigger picture of, we need a global alliance of basically healthy patriots and nationalists having allying to preserve Western civilization. Like, we've got to have that allyship, and there's so much we can learn from Israel in terms of preserving civilization and resisting Islamism, because Israel's done it and it's doing it right now. So Israel needs the West to survive, but we also need a global allyship of civilizationists to survive as well.
Were you not concerned about the fact that they've been engaged in this war, where obviously thousands of people have been killed, horrific images everyone's seen, and obviously there's to some degree it's hard to know what's real, but definitely lots of horrific stuff's happened. Obviously October 7th was horrific as well, but were you not worried about like being associated with that or seeming to advocate that?
Nah, because like people already think that I do. So I'm not bothered, and everybody always pulls out. Oh, look at this, goat that was shot in the bum by an Israeli sniper or whatever, and it's like, man, it's a war. You know what I mean? Horrible stuff happens in war. The best thing to do if you don't want your goats to be shot in the bum by Israeli snipers is not to go in and mess with Israel. Like, it's really simple. Just don't mess with Israel. It's never gone well for any Arab state. It's never gone well for the Arabs, for the Palestinians. As soon as you go in and blow up a bunch of Israelis, you're gonna suffer. And Israel's learned over the years that you really have to have a very firm response. If you respond, if you do the same thing that we do in Britain, where we're like, oh, don't look back in anger. Oh, let's give them some more funding for their mosques so they can spend it on probably weapons to hide in that mosque. If you do the British thing of appeasing every step of the way, then you're just encouraging and sort of fomenting this mob that's now we're going to see this weekend, we're going to see probably 300,000 Muslims descend on Birmingham that look to have a protest that looks like it could descend into a pogrom. I mean, that's a fun one to watch. I wouldn't want to be a Jewish person living in Birmingham when that happens. So yeah, I mean, the war thing, like, war is horrible, but people wouldn't do it. People don't do war for fun. They do it because it's necessary,
And were you really pro-Palestine in your 20s? Is that true?
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess when you're young, it's easy to sort of swallow this sort of romantic narrative of the poor, oppressed Arabs and Muslims. There's only 1.7 billion of them, being bullied and intimidated by the horrible, bigger, nastier Israelis and Jews, because there's 15 million of them, and that's a lot more than 1.7 billion. And the Israelis, they're financially much mightier, even though they're actually much poorer than Qatar and other countries that arm and fund Hamas and arm and fund all the propaganda. So I think it's easy to be dumb when you're young, and also when you're banging an Egyptian lassie. I think that's something that can lead you to go on marches and get all angry, so she gets all worked up, and then that's fun.
Well, you can do that without having those politics, but I won't say how I know. But so what about? I wonder whether to. By the way, while we're talking about Tommy, did you see this thing where he? Well, I'm sure you saw it, where he was actually let off the terrorism charge. And did you think that was a turning point? Because the judge actually said that he couldn't see why they'd even arrested him, except that he was Tommy Robinson, and that they just thought, oh, we can probably get an arrest here, and that it was for his beliefs, and there was no evidence. And he says, look, if MI5 are saying he's not a terrorist, why are you stopping him on terrorism charges? You're just looking for something. And Tommy, of course, wouldn't give him the phone. He said, not a chance, bro. You look like a C word, so you ain't having it. Um, classic,
That's classic
classic
Tommy.
Tommy. Yeah,
I love it when Tommy, like, a BBC journalist will, like, hit him on Twitter with some, like, real serious, like, like, vicar's wife question. And he'll just be like, shut it, you slag.
yeah. It really cuts through the noise. So,
Yeah.
well, the judge just said, this was discriminatory, and you just, basically that you took him on, you stopped him because of that. There was no evidence the stop was carried out diligently or expeditiously, and it was a fishing expedition. So, is that a sort of turning point for this? Because I have friends who are, very smart people, not the kind of people that are dangerous in any way, but they've been, at least two people I know have been stopped at the airport and put through this terror thing and asked for their devices. So that's obviously a ridiculous, tyrannical thing to do to people who have opinions contrary to the progressive elite. But do you think that this is a turning point in this case?
Yeah, I mean, this is a worrying thing. I mean, Britain has way more speech speech crime arrests than, like, even Belarus and Russia and places like that. Like, we're not living in a free society. When I travel across borders, I take a burner phone. It's, for me to have to do that. That's kind of, not far off. Some sort of Soviet system. Because like you, I know more than one person who's been stopped at the border and had to surrender their phone and laptop and all the rest of it. And I know Tommy was worried because this trial, even though going through it, the due process obviously wasn't followed in the case. When the police took the phone, and it was obviously motivated by the fact the policeman just wanted to arrest Tommy Robinson. I know when I worked in the police. The police often had people wanted to arrest a celebrity. The celebrity, where I was that guy at the Libertines with the dirty fingernails. What's his name? Pete Doherty. Yeah, so they because he drove around in a Jaguar. He's really really obvious. So everybody wanted to stop his Jaguar and check him for drugs and stuff. And Tommy's a celebrity, so they want to stop him. But I mean, this is also the state. I mean, the CPS or whatever, deciding to push it through. There's an obvious state harassment of Tommy Robinson because he's a political dissident. He's sort of like our Alexei Navalny. And I know people are going to scoff at that. They're going to be like, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Alexei Navalny was a fine, upstanding man and a lawyer and all the rest of it." It's like Tommy's like a nice guy, a genuine guy. He cares deeply about his country. He's very principled. And Alexei Navalny was also a nationalist. This is what people don't realize. I think when we look at political dissidents in China or Russia, we have this romantic idea that they must be Guardian reading Owen Joneses, and they're not. The ones quite often the Russian opposition is fiercely nationalist, and to a level that would probably get them put in jail in the UK. And Navalny aligned himself with a lot of nationalist groups, and he was a great man. And I think people are waking up to the fact that Tommy Robinson is just being unfairly persecuted, and also Tommy isn't the sort of the violent thug that he kind of used to be. He's changed his tone. He's moderated his tone. There's basically no violence at his marches, even though there's hundreds of thousands of people who are pretty capable of violence and might actually have to be violent at some point in the future if things hit the fan. He's not like that anymore. And even back in the day, he had a movement called Black and White Unite, and so it was about bringing all races together to support Britain to be a patriotic movement. And it's like, man, of all the people to pick, don't choose like a really charismatic, popular guy who's clearly not a racist, and then be like, oh, this guy's a racist. Because that worked for a bit. I used to believe Tommy Robinson was a racist. He was like a byword for racism, and it's not true at all.
Yeah, I watched his Oxford Union speech many years ago, and that sort of changed my mind. If you showed it to people, they suddenly had a completely different perspective on him as just a guy who'd come from a certain town which had been radically changed and taken over, and horrible things had happened to his friends. And you go, oh, yeah, I get this. But yeah, the BBC is still calling him far right in a recent piece. And you just think, Well, since he's also obviously not, as you say, sort of very pro multiracial, pro Israel, his views are kind of like a neocon or neoliberal. I don't know, really, just a Zionist kind of liberal. But he is as a symbol, he's this other thing. But I said they're gonna have to start calling people actually far right, far right, and it ends up sounding like a Talking Head song. You've got far right. It's like you can't call Tommy far right because he's just not accurate, and they keep doing it though. But do you think that case will actually change anything, or is it one of those cases where you occasionally get like a one-off sensible judge? Like the Bell Hotel was ordered to be shut, then the non-sensible judge said, "No, you've got to. I'm overturning that." Will this guy just be ignored as a one-off sensible bloke?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what Tommy was worried about because it's a judge, a judge instead of a jury. At least with a jury, you've got a sort of, there's some sort of chance of a balance of opinions. But with a judge, what if you get an activist judge who hates Britain, who thinks that believes all the spiel about Tommy, and that's a worry, and nobody should have to live under that kind of stress and duress unless they're a criminal or a terrorist, and Tommy isn't a terrorist. It's an absolute joke. It's mad thinking back to a few years ago, we couldn't even say Tommy's name on YouTube.
Right. And I said it, and I supported him on GB News, and then you and Simon sort of weighed in, but even that was edgy.
Yeah,
it wasn't like
I remember
getting in trouble.
I remember getting told off for talking about Tommy Robinson, and I remember on Lotus Eaters having to refer to him as Romy Tomlinson to avoid the automatic YouTube thing.
Callum used to call him the bad man. That was quite useful.
And weirdly, man, I was talking to Liam Tufts, and his one of his Facebook accounts was taken. I think it was his personal Facebook account was taken down because there was a picture that he posted wasn't of Tommy Robinson or anything, but somebody in the background of the picture was holding a placard with Tommy Robinson's face on it, and that was enough to get his account nuked.
Wow. I know we've been through a very strange time. Maybe it'll come back with Mamdani. Some people are saying woke's back. I want to get onto that, but on this related topic to Israel, I really want to ask you about what's happening in America. So, in case anyone's missed it, Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show. Now, Nick Fuentes is still somewhere. You're still not sure if you can say his name or have him on YouTube, or will your channel be taken down? So he's still in that bracket. He's been banned from absolutely everything, on the no-fly list, had his bank accounts frozen, banned from Uber, all those kind of things, to an even greater extent than Tommy, actually. But then lately, he's had this sort of, I think actually gone mainstream, but something like that. He's up to 1 million followers on Twitter. Tucker Carlson called him a gay fed, but then changed his mind and decided to have him on, or maybe it was all part of the same theater, depending on if you believe in the kayfabe wrestling interpretation. Anyway, he then had him on. He gave him what some people thought was a soft soap interview. And the neocon right, Zionist right, whatever you want to call it, some people call it the Israel first right versus America first. Maybe that's not a neutral term. I don't know what the neutral terms are, but the faction of the right, which is Dinesh D'Souza, Mark Levin, various others, have been attacking Seth Dillon from Babylon B, Dave Rubin. They've all been attacking, whereas the other side seems to have Tucker, Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens now, and some various other people. What is your take on that? Because ostensibly, as a sort of pro-Israel person, you would be on the former side, but I believe you have a more nuanced take.
Yeah, I mean, I think the approach is wrong. Like, I think treating Nick Fuentes as if he's a serious solemn figure who means everything he says in an absolute literal sense. Like that's silly. He's an entertainer. He's very charismatic, and he's funny, and he makes a lot of good points. Makes a lot of dumb points as well. But don't treat him like that. I think it would do more damage to Nick Fuentes if they just co-opted him and said, "Hey, this guy's great. This guy's really funny. Hey, come and see this. This Mexican homosexual. He's saying some really funny things." That would take the sting out of it. And like I was saying earlier about the whole perception of Israel, I think Nick Fuentes and I think the Groypers, number one, I don't see the sort of genuine malicious anti-Semitism in Nick Fuentes that you see in people on the left who genuinely want to exterminate Israel. And genuinely think it's justified to see Jews in Britain driven from their homes. I just don't see that. I think he's playing with it, and also he's highlighting a sense of bitterness that a lot of people have, that Jews seem to be, I don't agree with it, but they seem to be advocating for nationalism for Israel, but then open borders, multiculturalism for the rest of the West. So I think a lot of groypers, and I think Nick Fuentes himself could be one round. Nick is essentially a Zionist, but for America. So the principles are the same. I think if Nick understood that Israel actually wants nationalism for the West, and I think if Israel made more of a case of that, I think if we had more prominent Jews and Israelis speaking out and being like, yeah, we support Western nationalism and we support the right, then no problem. That would take the sting out of the bitterness that some people on the right feel. Even if I don't agree with them, I can see that they've got a bit of a point. And this whole approach of, like, I've seen people calling for him to be banned and censored and stuff. It's like, oh man, it's woke. That's when people speak about the woke right, I never understood it. And like, you've got these people saying, oh, woke right is when people care about their own demographic group or whatever. And it's like, what? No, that's not. That's woke is when you do stuff like that. Woke is when you try and censor people because you disagree with them, even though they're making a point. And you're not addressing the point. You're not playing the ball. You're playing the player. So yeah, I think Nick Fuentes could easily end up being an a pro-Israel Zionist.
I can't wait to see that. I sort of see up. I mean, the problem with the argument is you're sort of saying about the Zionist side. Well, if they could just get rid of the Zionism part, kind of, because the part is that they are American, but they want Israel to have a special standing, whereas others are saying why
they need to keep the Zionism part and also have Zionism for the rest of the West.
Right. Yeah, it's all to do with this sort of lobbying, and we don't have it in quite the same way in this country. We have the street marches and the concern about Jewish people safe, but we don't seem to have to the same degree the influence on our politics angle, which America has massively. We have it from like the EU more. I would say it's like Brussels controls us, whereas a lot of the people on the America First side think, well, Israel controls us. They have a special standing. They have special treatment. We give them all this money, and what's the argument for that? And the argument is not totally clear to me even. But on the tactics part as well, that is where they go really wrong. I forgot to mention Ben Shapiro. He just did a whole 40-something minute video just quoting Desmond Tucker with a Poe face. And it just didn't work at all.
Oh, yeah, Poe face and his nasally voice. It's like, I'm back at school and I'm getting told why I'm a naughty boy.
Here's a really funny joke. It's just like he's sharing these things. And the thing is, I just don't have it in me to be offended about them. Because, one, I don't seem to have that gene. But two, what is Fuentes doing there? To me, it's like your mate saying something in a WhatsApp chat. What man, especially young men, doesn't do edgy jokes? Zero, in my experience. Yeah. All he's doing, in my opinion, is taking what would normally be in a WhatsApp group and putting it on. He's saying it publicly to his chat, but it's kind of only quasi-public because it's on his channel. It's to his chat who are just saying things at the end, and he's bored and he's sort of riffing. He's having a joke with his supporters. Yes, I understand he's sort of autistic enough to not realize maybe I shouldn't do that in public, but it's kind of quasi-private, I would say, because it's to his chat on his channel. So it's like they're basically jokes between mates. You're taking them out of context and playing them with a really serious face. And of course, they sound insane there, but then you're like, does he really want his? We can't say the word on YouTube, but does he really want his followers to grape, kill, and die for him for the cause, pledge allegiance? Like, that's ridiculous. So when Shapiro's going, this is what he believes in, it's like, it's not really though.
Yeah. It's a joke. And if it was what he believed in, then there'd be hundreds of thousands of young men going out and doing that stuff. And that there isn't. I mean, I do think he's got it wrong. But then he's changed his mind on things before. He changed his mind on Ukraine, because I was always very dismissive of Nick Fuentes, because he was pro-Putin and saw Ukraine as some sort of, WEF, global homo, multiculti thing. And it's like, no, Ukraine's a 98% white, extremely traditional Christian nationalist country. It's got issues with corruption and stuff, but where it doesn't, and I don't think that would be improved by having Putin take it over. Whereas Putin, the whole of Russia now is I think it's 15% Muslim, and he's importing people from the Horn of Africa, from the Sahel, from the Middle East, hand over fist. He's suppressing Russian nationalism. He's even like Strelkov and people like that. It's not just Navalny who's getting locked up. Actual genuine Russian patriots and nationalists, people who fought in Ukraine, people who led battles in Ukraine, are getting locked up. And when I say Russian patriots, I mean patriots to him. The genuine Russian patriots are against him, like Denis Nitikin and people like that. But I don't know how Nick Fuentes changed his mind. I don't know if it was reading my tweets or maybe watching my videos, but he has done a pretty much complete 180 on that, and he's taken a much more sensible tack on Ukraine now. He's basically saying to Trump, if Ukraine falls, what's that going to mean for the rest of the West? And then Putin's going to get all these weapons. He's going to get, because Ukraine is the biggest military armament manufacturer in Europe at the moment. So he's going to have all that capacity. He's going to have, those armies. So that's bad. So maybe Ukraine shouldn't fall. So if he change his mind on that,
Yeah, he's gone a bit more imperialist. It sounded like recently with some of it, rather than just nationalist. And because he's always doing a lot of reading, he's always changing his mind. Yeah, and another thing. What's the other thing he's changed? Oh, yeah, he started saying that he'll side with anyone who's America first. So it sounded like a kind of civic nationalist argument he's suddenly making. That, like, hey, if you're America first, you're a friend of mine, sort of thing. Yeah, his views change a lot. Partly they're ironic. Sometimes they're serious. The edgy jokes, like you say, the side attacking him surely are the more woke because they're using anti-Semitism instead of racism. But other than that, it's exactly the same. It's trying to cancel someone using a magic word and then taking things out of context, saying they're evil. But it's not really working. The other thing is, it is actually an old debate on the right. Apart from the edgelordism and all that, it goes back to Pat Buchanan, who sort of is becoming more and more popular, sort of retrospectively, because there's always been this side. There's been the William F. Buckley side, who tried to control the discourse on the right. And then there's been people like Paul Gottfried who complained and said Buckley is censoring us, and he invented the term paleo-conservative, Gottfried, and said, no, we've got these other views. And so there's people like Samuel Francis, Paul Gottfried, Pat Buchanan kind of weren't allowed into this movement. And it's like, no, this is the movement. And the really interesting figure here is Tucker Carlson, because he was in that neocon side, and he was mates with all these people like Buckley. But then he came across, and he's come across, and a lot of the actual attack has been not at Fuentes, but at Tucker for having him on, and it's been really nasty stuff. And even I just post something about him vaguely positive, and people will be like, oh, he's an anti-Semite, blah, blah. It's like suddenly at 56, they want to say he's this evil anti-Semite who's just been hiding it. Whereas he, of course, just says he just doesn't like Israel's special standing and doesn't see any he doesn't believe with the biblical precedent, and he just is America first. What do you think about the attack on Tucker specifically?
Yeah, I mean, the support for Israel in America is not just because America was sort of instrumental in the whole sort of creation of, not creation, but the designation of Israel. It's because America is full of Christians who believe in, they believe that they believe some sort of special stuff about Israel, and this is why Americans are so kind of crazy about Israel. American
Christian Zionists believe there's a biblical precedent for it and so on.
Yeah. So they're really kind of over the top. I'd understand if they had they just supported Israel, like I do, with a lot of specific reasons and principles. But I'm not going and jumping off a high board in an Israel flavored swimming pool wrapped in an Israel flag. It's just, for me, it just makes sense. But yeah, the attacks on Tucker, I guess Tucker's sort of playing it to be attacked. He always does this. Like when he went and interviewed Putin, he got the same kind of attacks, and then he's all like, "But I'm just asking questions" and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I haven't watched the thing apart from a few clips. I haven't watched the interview with Nick Fuentes. I don't watch a lot of Tucker Carlson stuff. I find his voice is sort of like the Ben Shapiro thing. When somebody's got and I know there's probably people disgusted by my voice, but that nasally, shrill, that voice that just hovers along the ceiling. It annoys me.
You think
Does it not annoy
Tucker
you?
sounds quite low, except when he laughs. No, I like Tucker's voice, but I know what you mean. Everyone finds Shapiro's voice annoying, but I suppose one
Yeah, that
claim about Tucker,
nasal whine.
yeah,
It's
but
like
love
being
him or hate him,
told off by a mosquito.
he has a real charisma. And he has massive views, doesn't he? Well, he and Fuentes both have massive views. Um, One thing about it is people said, well, look, the Ted Cruz interview was far more combative than the Fuentes or Putin one, which is absolutely true. He was obviously just it seemed to me it was like two blokes of more similar age, and they really disagree on this topic, and he was just hammering him in a
Yeah.
way. He's more other people he doesn't know as well. He's more respectful. If you do his show, you have dinner with him before and stuff as well, so it kind of like he gets to know the people. So you're probably unlikely to be, except for the Cruz case, he's unlikely to probably just be horrible to them because he likes to get to know them. Because Oren McIntyre did it, who's been on this show, and he gets to know you first and stuff. Anyway, that might be too much American stuff for my audience who are largely English, but or British. But
I saw Oren McIntyre made the same point that I made in our WhatsApp group. What was it?
What's that group? What he's well, it was Oren saying that really the other side is the woke side essentially because it's woke.
Oh
right,
yeah,
so ridiculous.
The woke right. Yeah. This is the woke right. People trying to cancel Tucker and Nick Fuentes, and it's like, man, it's easy to defeat arguments if you got a better argument. You know what I mean? It's simple. You don't need to be like, this is appalling and clutch your pearls, and that's giving them too much credibility. Just hit back with the understanding their point of view and combat it with explaining why they're wrong. Then you might convince them.
Yeah, I can't find that. Well, there's a different one where I said I want to make a formal apology to James Lindsay. The woke right is real. Is now attempting to cancel everyone who doesn't agree with a very particular form of racial identity politics. I mean, that is the funny thing. The other side, they do believe in a specific racial identity politics. They believe in cancelling people. Mark Levin has been shouting, "Yeah, we cancel them. We of course we want to cancel." He was just shouting about how they cancelled Pat Buchanan, they cancelled David Duke, and now they're going to cancel this guy. It's like, whoa, you're not supposed to say that, Mark. Like, you're supposed to pretend you're not cancelling. It's the funniest argument with just one side calling everyone woke right and the other side also calling them woke right. It's so stupid. But I said to you that the Milo deals with it much better because he uses the kind of the dark humor of Fuentes against him and does even darker humor with a sort of even nastier side to it. So I feel like that's the smart way to play it rather than the po-face. I can't believe these things they're saying that all young men like to hear. Young men like to hear edgy jokes because they've been oppressed. Young white men have been told you're scum by all Western societies. So they're like, they don't care anymore. They're like, yeah, bring on the Austrian painter jokes because we can't get any more evil than you already say we are. So they just
this is a point I made in Israel. You know when Bob Villain went on stage at Glastonbury. You know when Bob Villain went on stage at Glastonbury and was all like, he said a bunch of, anti-Semitic stuff and also said anti-British stuff. He's like, oh, I heard you want your country back. You scumbags, you're not getting your country back, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, wait until you see British people get organised, you dope. But if the Israel lobby and the Jewish lobby, like Jews came out and were like, he's being anti-Semitic. If the Jewish lobby had come out and been like, he's being anti-British and we're British, that would have immediately aligned them with Brits. It would have, British patriots would have seen the Jewish lobby as aligned with Britain and on their side and true British patriots, which Jews are. Let's be honest. Jews are some of the most patriotic Brits there are. You get the lefty ones, but the mainstream Jews, the ones that have got jobs, are incredibly patriotic.
All right, that is the end of the free episode. But if you want the full podcast, go to nickdixon.net for all the extra content, all my articles. That is my Substack, nickdixon.net. And we need your help to keep this whole thing going, keep the lights on, this amazing production, hiring people, etc. nickdixon.net to support us. It's £5 a month, which is about the cost of some sort of fancy latte in London, or as a slight discount if you get the yearly option, or it's just £5 a month. So we'll see you on nickdixon.net, and thank you very much.